What's the worst date you've been on? Took her to a quiet bar and grill, ordered a beer, and listened to her lecture me about how I am using beer to hide/deal with my insecurities. I ordered a second and a third. I went on a POF date with a girl. The setup was fun. We decided not to talk at all before we met, kinda like a real date would go before the internet. So we were both excited, set up to meet at an old bar in the city. I got there early, she arrived 5 minutes later. We talked, she suggested we eat. I wasn't super hungry, but got something. She drank about 4 drinks. During conversation, we had a lot in common, worked at the same place about a month apart, same movies, music, etc. Then at the end, I ask for the check. She says she needs to go to the bathroom, and then gets up and straight leaves. Just right out the front door, adios. I went back to ask her why she did that. She deleted her account. I'm not entirely sure she wasn't just a very hungry ghost. A girl reached out to me for a date. When she came to the date, she showed up, waved at me, left, then called me. Apparently she had put me in her phone as someone else, and scheduled a date with me thinking I was that other person. We ate together anyway. I was at work and a stunningly beautiful woman walked up and asked me out. I was in college and she was probably 25 to 26. It was an amazing date. She was funny and cool and insisted on paying for everything. At the end of our meal she looked at me and said, I promised myself I wasn't going to freak you, but I've changed my mind. Back at her place the sex was like porn sex, but something was off. She was very particular about positions and where we positioned ourselves. She also described in a very loud voice everything we were doing. By the time we were finished I was creeped out. I knew something was up. On the drive home I badgered her until she admitted that her fiancé had been watched us the whole night, from the bar in the restaurant and through the window when we had sex. I met a guy on Tinder, we talked for a while, and finally got up the nerve to invite him over. I made it very clear that this was like a meet and greet, there would be no sex, there would be no sleeping over. So he gets there and when he comes in he looks nothing like his pictures, a strange flat-faced balding ginger. He had an open cider drink and kept badgering me to taste it. Personal experience said no, and didn't take no very well. That was strike 1. Then he stepped back out to the car and bought an overnight bag, a blanket and pillow and started unloading all his pocket stuff onto my table. Strike 2. And when I finally think it can't get any worse he goes in my bedroom, and changes The Simpsons to some cheesy 80s B-horror movie, and makes himself at home in my bed. At this point I'm panicking. I send out a 911 text to my sister and she calls me with an emergency. I tell him I've got to go and he gives me a creepy grin and asks if he can stay till I get back. Hell no homie, GTFO. I watch him get in his car, I get in mine and I peel out still on the phone with my sister. I wait up the road in a hidden cut for about 20 minutes, come back to the house, and he's still freaking there standing outside my door holding that full bottle of cider that he kept trying to force me to drink. I'm freaking out. He's seen me pull back in and is walking up to the car, asking if we were going back in the house. Hell no, free crap, hell no. Long story short, he refused to leave and I had to call the cops. When he realized I was calling the cops, he chucked the cider into the tree line behind our parking spots and took off running. The car he was driving was stolen and when they tested the contents of the cider bottle, Rohypnol and morphine. In the trunk of the car was duct tape, a hammer and a bracelet that had been stolen off of a woman that had been drugged and raped a year prior. In college I went out for a going away party for a friend. There, I met some chick that a bunch of my friends know. We got pretty trashed, and had fun. Did shots. Danced. Did shots. Sang karaoke. Did Jaeger bombs. Chatted while smoking cigarettes on the patio. Did shots. Smoked a bowl on the patio. Drank beers. Did more shots. Really liked each other. So we exchanged numbers before leaving, and said we'd go out next week. Now, 20 minutes after leaving I literally passed out and landed on my face, because I was freaking trashed. So I was in prime condition this night. This girl knew I liked to party, as only college kids can, and horrifies me now. How did I survive? So, next week comes, and we line up a date. Since we don't know each other super well, we'll go to that same bar, where a bunch of mutual friends will be. We sit with them on the patio, and we chat. She's cute. But, that's all she is going for her. I find out we are absolute polar opposites. Her dad's a preacher, and she loves Jesus, and she doesn't like art, and she's waiting for marriage, and she doesn't like fishing, and hunting is cruelty, and the outdoors are icky, and I'm getting one-word answers saying she doesn't like anything I talk about, while she doesn't even try to make conversation. It's so awkward that our mutual friends are bailing, shifting further and further away from us, until there are only 3 of us left in our section and everyone else is on the other side of the patio. After about 45 minutes, I decide I'm going to need like 8 more drinks to make it through this. I ask if she needs another drink, and go inside to the bar. While I'm waiting, I say, "Nope, freak it." And I leave. I bail right out the back door. I don't even care, I don't say goodbye, I just leave. And delete her number from my phone on the way out. I stagger to a friend's house, explain that I was on the shittiest date ever, and proceed to get blackout drunk. 3 days later, a mutual friend who we'll call Kevin says, "Man, that date was pretty brutal, but it wasn't right how she treated you." I know, man, right? Yeah. I can't believe you went to get her another drink, and she left before you got back. That was really crappy. That's right. This date went so poorly we both bailed without telling the other person, and neither of us ever tried to contact the other one again. Back in college, this really hot girl in several of my classes starts flirting with me, laughing at my jokes, asking me for help with the assignments, complimenting me. After a few days, she asks what I'm doing after class. She needs to do a favor for her aunt, then we can have dinner and see what happens. I'm all over that. I drive her to her aunt's house. She introduces me to another guy that's already there, and tells him I'm there to help. He shows me what we're doing, replacing a flight of stairs going up to her kitchen door. The ground floor was the garage and storage. Never done anything like this, but she's hot, so I'm game. She disappears after we get started. About 30 minutes in, we've got the stairs assembled, it was a kit, and the other guy knew what he was doing, and wrestled it into place. We hadn't spoken too much beyond instructions, so I ask, "So how do you know Julie?" thinking he's a cousin or something. "Oh, we've been dating for about a year." I freeze, he looks at me. "Oh, crap, man, I'm sorry. I thought you were just a friend from school." She's done this before, but she promised me she'd stop. He goes on a little about how she likes to manipulate guys to prove she's still got it. At one point he says I'd leave her, but the sex is incredible. I make some remark about twisting the knife, and we both have a laugh over it. He was actually pretty cool about it and insisted I'd take $60 for helping. She came back with McDonald's for me. Drove home alone. She hardly spoke to me in class after that, which was fine with me. Anytime I saw her flirting with a guy after that, I'd quietly warn them off. I went out with a guy from Tinder who turned out to be legitimately crazy. He regaled me with stories of how he assaulted police officers, burned his arm to impress girls, spent significant time in a psych ward, and lost his virginity to an overweight prostitute. He also told me that my eating disorder made him feel better about himself, because it made me crazier than he was, and that I had obvious acne scars. After our disaster date, he wouldn't stop contacting me, even going so far as asking me to stay in a rented house with him in another city and claiming I had ruined his entire year. I deleted Tinder immediately after that. Went on a date with a wealthy bigger woman who was used to getting her way with men. We had become friends over the past few weeks due to mutual friends and hanging out at social gatherings. She asked me to go drinking with her, so I said sure. When we got to this little hole-in-the-wall bar, I was then introduced to all her drinking friends. I'm assuming the people that frequent this bar. Anyway, she started trying to aggressively make out with me in front of her friends and talk about how shy I was being. After I told her I didn't feel comfortable, she then, in front of the whole bar, yells, "How much weight do I need to lose for you to date me?" I got the impression I was no longer welcome at the bar. If everyone's looks could kill, I would have died 100 times. I left quickly. Story time. Very hot girl agreed to meet me at the bar I worked in, when I finished, and then we would go for drinks after. I was running late however, so I was in the office cashing up and said, I'd be down in 15 and she should get a drink at the bar. Maybe she was nervous or something because she pounded an entire bottle of wine, and got completely wasted. Then when I came down she started screaming at me, telling me I was missing out and she had worn special underwear for me. While screaming at me she walked away backwards and fell face first down an entire flight of stairs, knocking herself unconscious and knocking out her front teeth in the process. As she fell, her dress went up over her head, and showed everyone in the bar her special underwear, which was her and my names crudely stitched on a pair of beige granny pants. Hot, right? It gets worse. I called her an ambulance as she was in a state, but she was very confused, and though our date was still happening. She got out her makeup and started trying to put on, smearing blood and snot all over her face. She was very unsteady and couldn't concentrate or walk straight, but I stayed with her as she tried her best slurry date chat. I was helping her walk to the ambulance when she half fainted and fell. The doorman and I managed to catch her before she hit the ground, and he picked her up and carried her the rest of the way. She came to long enough to throw up all over herself and the doorman. He slipped on it and managed to smash her head off a car bonnet, knocking her out again and once again showing the special underwear to the gathered crowd. It gets worse. She was out for the count and I knew very little about her apart from her name, so they asked me to go with her to the hospital. I agreed and we headed off. When she came to in the ambulance she was extremely confused, and thought we had been on a date and it had gone so well we were heading back to my house for sexy fun times. She tried to take her clothes off and kept trying to unbutton my jeans, doing her best sexy face at me with her smashed up face covered in blood and vomit. Double hot. Still not done. When we got to the hospital she couldn't remember anything so they took her off to treat her. I then sat in the waiting room until I was promptly accosted by 2 policemen. She had woken up, and told the nurse that she thinks I beat her up. So I spent the night in the police station being interviewed about why I beat a woman half to death. I had to eventually get my boss to show the police the CCTV of her falling down the stairs, and from outside before they let me go. All in all, not the best date. I was volunteering at a master's studies orientation market when we met. Cute girl, had a nice chat, set up a date. I think I was 22 or 23 at this time. When the day comes I pick her up at her place. Turns out she lives with her mom and they have a rather childish argument about whether or not our bicycle lights are working, but alright. Moms will be moms. We have dinner and talk about this and that. She tells me about her horse, I tell her about when I tried horseback riding as a kid and we laugh. She talks about an actor who is so cute. So instead of taking a walk downtown after dinner we decide to go see the latest movie with that actor because why not, it's kind of chilly anyway. During the intermission we talk about music, and she hasn't heard of any of the bands I listen to, which is odd, because they're all basically evergreen pop and rock acts. I ask her about the music she likes and she mentions a whole bunch of current boy bands. I'm starting to have a horrible hunch and ask her a few more questions, before I finally give into that sinking feeling and ask her the question. How old are you? Turns out she's 14 and a half. The guy behind us just about chokes on his popcorn as he realizes what's happening. Turns out she wasn't at the orientation market to find a master study, she was tagging along with her older sister who I never met or heard about. Perfectly lovely person, but I felt so stupid. I went to pick her up and her family was waiting at the kitchen table for me. Her family quizzes me and finds out I smoke pot. They demand I smoke one with them. I bust out my bag and her little brother, who was probably 18 or so, starts rolling a joint. This was back in 1997, so there was seeds in the bud. The kid takes a couple buds, barely breaks them up, and rolls them into the most pregnant joint I have ever seen. Lights it up and it starts popping like magnitude from Community. None of them bat an eye that there is seeds in the joint and they smoke it like it's some Cannabis Cup winning strain. After getting her family baked, we leave and she insists we just drive around for a couple hours. She was cool but her family was weird. I decided to not ask her out again because what if we hit it off and got married? I couldn't live with myself knowing my in-laws think seedy weed is acceptable. I guess I am kind of lucky if this is the worst date I ever had. I used it. I'm a fat ugly bastard. I matched with a girl who wasn't too shabby looking, texted for a few days until we were both off. I picked her up, she was very cute, went to dinner at a Japanese steakhouse and had a good time, drank some sake. She suggested we go back to my place. Woo, we stopped by her apartment to get her car and she wants to get close. She follows me to my house and we make out in my driveway for a few and start to move towards the house. I'm excited, gonna get laid and all. Yes sir, been a while. So we are on my front porch and she goes, "Ew, what's that?" and points to this baseball-sized doe that hangs out on my porch. This is his second year it there. Anyways, I explain he is cool and I knock beetles off my porch light for to eat and stuff. She walks over to him, looks at me, like intense eye contact, and proceeded to slowly stomp on my toad. Now at this point I was experiencing several emotions: shock, anger, rage. I shouted at her, "WTF, why'd you do that?" To which she replied, "I wanted to make you mad so you'd freak me hard." I was speechless, while I processed what I had just witnessed. I told her to get the freak of my property, she flips out, we yell back and forth, I sprayed her with the hose and she finally leaves, only to show up 20 minutes later topless on my deck in the backyard. She had walked from down the road and pulled like 6 pickets down from my fence to get in the backyard. Cops came, she cried her way out of trouble with them and left. I was seeing this girl on and off, AFWB deal. She told me she had a hotel room for some cheerleader event she was coaching at the time, and I should come out and keep her company. This is in King of Prussia, PA. I live in NJ. Offer of fun hotel sex, but a bit of a drive? Sure. I'm in. Drive the couple hours out there to meet her in the hotel lobby, we go up to the room. Her dad is in the room. Because this is a cheerleading competition for her little sister, her entire family is there. Her father has to go into work as a firefighter, so he's leaving her the hotel room. He's carrying his overnight bag out as I'm carrying mine in. Unbelievably obvious as to what is about to go down. Never felt so uncomfortable.